Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to share my new book that Psychiatric Social Work has been published by RAWAT publisher recently. This book is a very unique resource for the social work profession for both master degree, bachelor degree as well as PhD student. This is for the first time by an Indian author. The book has been published, Psychiatric Social Work, as a textbook. Let's start to know about different unique features of this book. I will explain this book, what is there inside the content, chapter wise, and why it is useful for the social work fraternity. So let's start to know a more details about this book. The book has divided into 9 chapters. The chapter 1, which is talk about introduction to mental health. Chapter 2, psychiatric social work. Chapter 3, historical development of psychiatric social work, both US, UK, as well as India. Chapter 4 discuss about the classification and assessment of mental disorder. Chapter 5 theoretical approach and causes of mental disorder. Chapter 6 mental health infrastructure, legislation and program in India. Chapter 7 treatment and therapeutic intervention. Chapter 8 psychiatric rehabilitation and contemporary mental health. And the last chapter, which is chapter 9, talks about the contemporary trends in psychiatric social work education. Now we will discuss in details chapter wise what are the contents are there in each chapter. So let's start with the chapter 1. Chapter 1, which is talk about introduction to mental health. In this chapter, we have provided list of concepts related to mental health and and other aspects of mental health, like why mental health is important, prevalence rate of mental health in India, myth and beliefs of mental illness in India, and the concept related to mental health like health, disease, illness, mental illness, mental retardation, intellectual disability, mental hygiene, mental well-being, and as well as the concept related to social psychiatry, ethnopsychiatry, eco-psychiatry, and forensic psychiatry, and different mental health professionals, those who are working in this field. So the chapter 1 provides a detailed discussion, all the concept themes related to mental health and psychiatric social work. Regarding the chapter 2, which discuss about the psychiatric social work, the meaning, the definitions, the importance, objectives, along with this, the role and function of the psychiatric social worker in different settings. Specifically in this chapter, it has been highlighted the hospital and clinical setting, as well as role of a psychiatric social worker in the child guidance clinic. And the last part of this chapter has discussed about the required knowledge and skills by the psychiatric social worker. Then chapter 3, which is very important, the chapter 3 is discussed about the historical development of psychiatric social work in UK, USA, as well as in India. After nearly about 100 years of development, the growth development of the psychiatric social work, I am trying, means the author is trying to put all together how the subject and this specialization has evolved during different time period, like from World War One, World War Two, and in all the aspects. And when it was started as an academic course, everything has detailed discussed in this chapter. And related to the Indian context, we have discussed how it has been evolved in India from the beginning. In India, if you see, the first child guidance clinic was set up in 1935 in New Delhi. So, from the history, from the beginning of the history, we have discussed the psychiatric social work in India itself. Chapter 4, which is a very important chapter. In this chapter 4, we have discussed the classification and assessment of mental disorder. The chapter has broadly divided into two types parts. Part 1 is classification, part 2 is assessment. In part 1, we have discussed the classification based on ICD and DSM manual. Along with this, some mental disorder like common mental disorder, severe mental disorder, mental retardation, mental health problem among elderly, mental disorder due to substance use, suicide behavior, and part 2, which has discussed about the assessment. In that assessment part, we have discussed about the social assessment, medical and physical assessment, psychological assessment, as well as the mental status examination, which is really helpful. How we have to, as a social worker, as a psychiatric social worker, how we will conduct the MSE, which is very important. And that assessment is based on both qualitative and quantitative. Both of the researchers can get the idea. And along with this, as a social worker, what are the things you have to be followed during your assessment, how to take the interview, how to do the interview. All this process has been clearly mentioned in the chapter 4. Chapter 5, which discussed about the theoretical approach and causes of mental disorder. In theoretical approach, we have discussed several theories like normality, abnormality, stress theory, biomedical theory, deviance theory, psychopath social pathology, seek role withdrawal, social construction, means all the theories related to the social science and psychology, all the theory has been discussed which is related to mental disorder, and it is highly helpful for the research student. Those who are conducting the research in this field of mental health, they should have the minimum knowledge of this type of theoretical knowledge. Along with this, the chapter also discusses the biological and psychological model of mental disorder. This chapter also discusses about the ecological theories related to mental disorder. And the chapter 6, which is discussed about the mental health infrastructure, legislation and programs in India. The chapter has clearly discussed all the mental health care legislation from the beginning of Mental Health Care Act, with the history of Mental Health Care Act, then Mental Health Care Policy, DMHP, and National Mental Health Program. All these things have been discussed in this chapter, chapter 6. Chapter 7, which discuss about the treatment and therapeutic intervention for mental disorder. In this chapter, the author has focused different kind of treatment, both biological and psychological treatment. Along with this, the treatment of indigenous therapies like yoga and in Ayurveda, whatever the treatment therapies has been mentioned in this chapter, the author has been highlighted. Chapter 8 is very important chapter. This chapter, the author has discussed about the psychiatric rehabilitation and the community mental health in India. So here the researcher, the author has been discussed different rehabilitation programs related to mental illness and the role of a social worker, how to deal, how to do in the process of rehabilitation. Along with this, the author has also discussed the integrated mental health care and IEC. Along with this, the author also discussed community mental health and role of a psychiatric social worker in the community, how to work in the community. In this chapter, the author has been discussed all these things in detail. And the last chapter, that is called chapter 9, in this chapter, the author has discussed the contemporary trends in psychiatric social work in India, and from the student perspective, from the faculty perspective, and different students, how they will deal in this field, and role of a supervisor, role of a student, everything has been discussed. Along with this, the author also discussed about the challenges of psychiatric social work education in India. So these are the 9 chapters which has clearly mentioned all the aspects and covering all the aspects of psychiatric social work in India. And some of the special features of this book has covered all the syllabus related to psychiatric social work across India, which will help the student to understand easily. And in unit wise and the chapter wise and the concept, theme, sub theme, everything has been explained in this book in detail. And this book will help to get a specialized knowledge and social work practice in the field of mental health. And this book also focus of different dimensions where the contemporary students will gain the knowledge. And it is for the first time in India, this is the first textbook which has been compiled all the components across the India. If you see the book by Ratan Verma in 1991, the book was really basically focused on a research book. The book was based on the research findings, but this book, the psychiatric social work, it is purely a textbook which has focused in all the aspects. And this book will be the evidence-based social work practice. It will be helpful to all the students, researcher, and social work community. Now this book is available on the platform in social platforms like RAWAT, Amazon, and Flipkart. That book can be easily available. Even e-copy of the book also available. If you have any queries related to this book, the content, please contact me in this mentioned email ID and this WhatsApp number. I hope you will have I hope this book will helpful to all the faculty, students in social work practicum. Thank you. Thank you everyone.